Yo, if there was ever a Monday we were going to make some trouble, it is Monday, June 6th. It's actually Monday, actually making trouble, talking about Volvo and video games and bringing on Mr. Brian Pasch. Let's do it.
Everywhere I go, the people really want to know.
All right, make sure we are recording everywhere and ready to make trouble on a Monday, Kyle.
Everywhere. I got it shared out on the LinkedIn. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be just all over the place this morning. We got a crazy story to start with, and then bringing in our good friend Brian. And man, literally, when we say trouble, right?
Yeah,
like
let's redefine trouble.
Yeah, because a lot of people before we get started, a lot of people think when we say trouble, it's like messing everything up, getting in trouble, this element of like of fighting against something, right? And really what it is this trouble that says, no, we're going to get in the weeds and like go past the boundaries of everything that like all of, our friend Darren Doan said there's these like no trespassing signs that says you can't say this, you can't do this, you can't go there. But yeah, what we're saying is like, you can inch past it. You can have those conversations. You can dive in. And the type of trouble that we're making this morning is definitely in that spirit. So
there's good trouble. I mean, like all innovation is trouble. If you think about it, right? All innovation means that we're doing something differently than we did it before. And just by nature, the people who have established how it's done before have a vested interest in it staying that way because we're just change averse by nature. So trouble, innovation, it's all the same to us. We are going to be making a lot of trouble in September at ASOTU Con. I know we've been talking about it. Haven't released a ton of details yet, but you can go to asotucon.com and put your email in so that you can be ready when we release everything. We got a trip. We're going to Philly on Thursday. We're going to Philly on Thursday with the whole crew. Yes. We're going to check out the venue again. We've been there before. We're going to go see Sioka Subaru, go to their grand opening, the flagship Subaru store in the country. So just, stay tuned for that stuff. We'll probably post some things on our socials about it. But yeah, we're making some trouble this week as ASOTUCon is happening. Summer's in full swing. Do you have a summer weekend? Like, when does Nashville summer start? Like in February?
We had a very summer weekend. I told the crew this morning we hit the pool for the first time, and so that's like official summer start. Your feet hit the pool, you're in summer.
That's it.
So, yeah, exactly.
Cue Will Smith summertime, right? The music starts, and you're like, now we're having summer. Yeah. Well, in upstate New York, summer starts around now, right? Because it was snowing last week. So summer starts now. And like for all of you that enjoyed some great summer weather over the weekend, we were feeling you even in Syracuse. It was like mid-70s, which is my happy place, right?
Paul was out singing "We on a Boat." It was all the things.
We busted out the pontoon boat. We were just cruising around in hoodies.
Naturally.
But it's all good. So summer's a great season to get going. The kids are home from school and things are going. My kids over the weekend were playing Fortnite. And if you've ever heard of the game Fortnite, it's by a company called Epic Games. I don't know how you could have not heard of the game Fortnite at this point.
You've at least seen a kid doing the Fortnite dances.
Those dances, like 90% of those started in the game Fortnite, just so you know. They started in the video game. And this weekend was the launch of a new season. So Fortnite, the way the game works is they launch seasons, and then they have these big epic scenes, and everyone shows up at the same time to see what's going to happen. And this involved the space station and these big mechs that walk around and some collaborative destruction of asteroids, which seems really cool. But the reason we're talking about Fortnite so much is because Volvo has announced a partnership with Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite, to further develop the in-vehicle experience using their proprietary technology, which is called Unreal Engine. So we thought this was a great time to bring up the little Volvo partnership because all of a sudden, I'm really interested in buying a Volvo.
I know. I'm like, where can I get the Volvo with that experience in? And this is what I think OEMs really, in my opinion, there's this like chase after EV, and we're probably going to get into this in a second with Brian. Yeah. But what I would say is that what people really want out of EV and this kind of new mindset is maybe not particularly EV. I think there's a large swath of culture that wants the EV, but I think what EV actually opens up is this collaborative effort in technology, not necessarily, oh, I get a battery car. It's, oh, this car opens up the mentality of all of the software that comes alongside of that type of innovation. And this is a lean into that for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, the goal is to provide what they say. Thomas Stovacek, we'll say that.
Yeah, there you go.
Volvo head of user experience said they hope, and this is quoting from an automotive news article, they hope that their partnership will provide rich layers of information to the driver without the additional distraction or stress. They want to bring game quality graphics into cars and provide new functions that people aren't used to having in the car. So you think of the way people navigate through video games, and when you're in a video game, you have all this information coming at you at once. So it makes sense that they would be an expert at processing that and then displaying it in a usable real-time fashion, allowing you to keep your focus on the main thing, right? So
because literally, wow, this entertainment system in my car is unbelievable, said no one ever.
You should see my son, my 15-year-old son, any of my kids tapping through the infotainment system, and they're just
like,
the lag.
They're
like, I'd rather look out the window.
Like the trees are green
like
again.
This is weird, right? Yeah, they're just disgusting, right? So I think we're going to see a massive step forward in just the processing speed, the natural integration, and this is just a great example of importing the best things from technology and culture outside of automotive and bringing it inside automotive. And I think the EV revolution is a great excuse, to like level up all the areas of the user interface. And like, I think you're right on, Kyle. You said it's not just the EV thing, but it's easy to tie the technology because of what Tesla did for the user interface in a vehicle. Right. And it makes sense that this would be the next step. So Fortnite, maybe there'll be a Fortnite edition. Maybe there will be.
That would be a sick car.
It would be. But regardless, this is a great, it's just a great, I think, step forward that Volvo is doing for the whole industry, because others are going to follow suit or are already in the hunt. But speaking of EVs.
Stop. Segue.
Time.
Okay. This is the main event of this Monday. On Friday, Mr. Brian Pasch, a fellow troublemaker, he was a troublemaker before we coined the phrase troublemaker, right?
Way before. This guy's been doing trouble for years and years.
And I have to say, he's been really instrumental in just my career in automotive. He's always been very open-handed with sharing, because it's in his nature to share advice, to share knowledge, to introduce people. And so it's fun to watch this progression happen. But he wrote an open letter to Jim Farley, and he put it out on LinkedIn. And I don't even know what the count is. We'll talk about it in a second, but it was over 12,000, I think, as of this morning. But we brought Brian Pasch into the show so we can hear from him directly. Brian, Isaac, drop Brian into the stream.
Come on. We're in.
He's wearing the shirt.
I'm in boss mode. I'm in boss mode.
He's got a shirt that just says boss. When I reposted his letter on Friday, I hashtagged boss mode because it was just a very direct and respectful and honest questioning of, okay, you said these things. Here are the questions your dealer network has, and here are some thoughts that might push back a little bit on some of the thinking. I like in your LinkedIn profile, Brian, I just noticed your title is contrarian, which is fantastic. But Brian, welcome to the program. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what spurred you to write the letter?
Well, thanks both of you for inviting me in. When Ford first announced a number of months ago that they were going to split internally, basically their EV and ICE, around that time, Wall Street was hoping that Ford would actually break into two companies, because investors saw that the value of Tesla would really take Ford stock, and in that EV company really allow them to afford an amazing multiple. Now, Jim Farley and the board of trustees decided not to do that, to create an internal division. And at that time, there was just a few little hints. It was the EVs are going to be one price, and that we're going to have some national portal for them to be ordered. And I started talking to dealers about this. So when people read this letter with the 10 questions and they're like, Brian, that was well thought out, I want to give credit to the dealer community, because I would ask them, what are you concerned about? What are you concerned about? And these 10 questions really are now a response to Jim's interview at the Bernstein conference last week. And these are just sincere questions to start a dialogue to help dealers prepare for the future.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Kyle. You were going to say something.
I really, obviously, if you are listening to the show, make sure you go to the show notes and read the whole questions. There's no way we can go into all 10. But there's, I think, a few that I have, distinct, like I want to have the conversation with you around them. And maybe there's one that's more poignant to you and we can have that discussion as well. But what I love about this is it's not like you didn't come at it with a question and an answer format. Because I do think that for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these are probably questions that a lot of dealers are actually struggling with internally already.
Yeah.
Right. We've been in digital retailing land for 2 years. And one of the questions that you posed that I think is probably the most stark when it comes to all digital retailing or national sales portals is this either negative equity or credit challenge situation that has the most struggle going into any sort of online purchasing portal. And that's something that both dealers and OEMs are going to have to figure out, no matter whether it's agency model or franchise model.
Yeah, the tools that are out there today, and there's a lot of great tools, work really well for perfect credit. And they work really well when someone has a clean or a trade with equity. But, in these last 2 years, people are paying MSRP plus. Let's roll this out. There's not a lot of EVs that Ford needs to sell. Everything in their small production is sold out. But let's go out 2-3 years. It's going to be a very different picture. And I think that this idea of 100%, that was the claim, 100% online. I'm not sure if the Ford executive team really talked to some of their digital retailing partners. Autify has been a big platform for Ford dealers, right? It was kind of their first real big push. I don't see Autify dealers pushing more than 10% of their sales through digital retailing. I mean, and that's a big gap to 100.
Well, that's kind of what you said in the letter. You're like, it was kind of a question like, do you realize that still the feedback on the ground, the consumer feedback, and I'm saying like they're voting with their feet, right? They're walking into the stores when they could purchase completely online. You did a great job, I thought, of saying like, let's listen to the consumers and then listen to the people that have closest contact with consumers, right? Not a focus group, not a survey says, right? Not a perception of what Tesla's doing or what people like about Tesla. And you really brought up this, like, actually, this is what the consumers are saying about this very point.
Right. And, the bigger issue, and by the way, there's been hundreds of public comments and dozens of private comments because some dealers and industry folks do not want to publicly,
of course,
identify with the letter.
It's been a largely respectful conversation, which I think is setting an awesome tone for collaboration because we do need each other. And that's really the point. But so you were saying.
Yeah. And I think what the general mindset is from the dealers, like, Brian, these are the questions we're worried about. Like, thank you for putting them. And I hope Jim Farley does reach out and set a tone, whether it's speaking at the MRC conference in the fall or just doing an interview. But what I'm hearing is, Brian, you've kind of encapsulated a lot of concerns. And think about this. Think of a dealer who's going through a renovation or is building a new point.
Yes.
So some of these points can be 20 million, they could be $30 million, even some brands high as $40 million for the build out. Mm-hmm. And if Europe is a predictor of United States, Stellantis, which canceled every one of their OEM contracts with dealers, they're coming back and saying, look, you're going to be an agent, mm-hmm. and we're going to pay you for a sliver of your overhead for your showroom because we just need you to put a few models. That big thing that we told you to build 2 years ago? Well, sorry, we don't need that anymore. And so I'm wondering, does Ford have the conviction right now when they're going to a local Ford dealer and saying, you need to update your facility? are they changing today the facility upgrade plans to minimize dealer cost? These are real practical questions. And if I'm a Ford dealer building a new point,
about to write a check, right?
right?
It's the most practical question.
Most practical question is, should the brand standards, should the brand refresh projects, and they're going on throughout the country, really be thinking of a mini EV facility? Like, is that where we're going? And there's so far we have no answers on that.
No, we were actually talking last week, and we talked to our good friend Liza Myers-Borges, who you know as well, about how it seems like Honda is the only one starting to work toward a showroom that is smaller, that's more compact, that is focused around a delivery center model as opposed to a very like large showroom state model. And I do think that that's another piece, because here's the thing. I don't think that dealers are not cut out to be innovative and be profitable, even in an agency model. If we move complete agency model, I think dealers are cut out to do it. It's just that if the work over the next 3 years doesn't prepare to that end to be financially profitable from a real estate marketing and inventory perspective, then it will not be cut out.
The whole thing doesn't work.
Exactly.
The whole thing doesn't work.
Right. And that's what the 10 questions are. In this national portal, when someone goes to buy a Ford EV, are you taking in the trade? Meaning, are you taking away that income, that trade vehicle? Are you providing the F&I, or do I, like, these are just some practical things.
Oh, there's so much practicality.
Yeah. And also, I also feel that some of the publics saw this coming sooner than others, like with Sonic, with Echo Park, where they've peeled off their used car business into a separate brand.
Yep.
I'm wondering if they saw the day where their franchise new car facilities were much smaller and that they needed to separate used cars. And because in that model, right?
Driveway, click lane, EverDrive.
They could have a small new car franchise facility, take in the trade, push it down to Echo Park. You know what I mean?
I wonder if that was part of the, if it was, that's amazing to have that level of foresight and knowledge and understanding. Back, I remember one of the reasons I always advocated for that breakout is just a practical level of control over brand. Like in the Automotive Manifesto, I talked about like just the brand control that you have to build an experience without the restrictions and limitations, to be something that's uniquely you. So regardless of why they did it, the people who did that have like an even bigger advantage going into this EV world, especially if things migrate more to a delivery center model, right? They have the leverage and the scale to say, okay, we can do delivery center, crush it, do really well, realize the OEM's vision for how they want the consumer the transaction to be, and at the same time, still exercise that entrepreneurial level of control over revenue and fixed ops and all of those other things. I want to get to one question that you brought up in your 10 that I thought was like, for me, it was like, yeah, that, right? Because everyone talks about EV ordering and how it's so easy in Tesla, right? It's like buying an iPhone. Well, it's like, because there's only 2 options, right? pick your color, and do you want this one or this one? It's like when you give your kids a choice of what they wear. Do you want to wear this blue one or this blue one? Right? They're like, I want to wear that one. You're like, great. You just picked your own outfit. Not really. So your question, and I'll read it here. You said, could the complexity of, I can always hear your voice when I'm reading your writing, right? It's right here. I hear it in your cadence and your voice.
The pace and cadence. Yes.
I'm not going to do my impression because you're here, but I'll do a good impression when you're not here. Could the complexity of trims and optional packages in the Ford EV lineup challenge consumers' ability to confidently configure, build, and purchase a vehicle online? So you use the Bronco as an example.
Yeah. I mean, think of the Bronco. When you go to the Bronco website, there's a couple different models. And then within each model, they have tons of accessories and cool things to configure. I remember when I bought a Ford truck, I remember sitting down with a dealer, and this guy was brilliant. He knew all the op codes. It was like, well, you can't use this op code because that cancels out this. I told him what I wanted, and he was like, oh, and I'm like, how did you know all those options? I've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
So
This
I'm
is
I'm just wondering, like, even on a BMW, do you want the cold weather package? Well, what's in the cold weather package? Well, that cold weather package, you're going to need this other package. And I'm just wondering, what happens when the consumer orders the car and it's wrong?
bingo.
Like there'd be like a realistic thing that somebody who's
Gonna happen, right?
what's going to happen, right? And what is someone going to call the consumer back and say, let's review all this? I don't know, but I just
It's
think
literally Paul
so
and I.
simple.
Sorry, Paul and I have had this discussion, and I go back to this Brain Games episode where we actually put consumers in a more stressful situation the more options we give them without control and guidance, right? And so there's literally the potential for stressors to enter the buying process where people are trying to move out of the quote unquote stress of going to a dealership. They're actually introduced to a new layer of stress because they have to take ownership of all the decision making, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's like those of you on the East Coast, it's like going into a diner in New Jersey. Now, we've all had breakfast. And by the way, there's only 10 things that people eat for breakfast. You go into a Greek diner in New Jersey, and there's 100 choices on the menu. And
turkey dinner, goulash, lobster tail, right? Right? At 8 a.m.
Scampi. But the idea is people will spend like 10 minutes going through all this, and then they're like, yeah, I'll have two eggs and toast. Yes. So the question is there's no downside. It's a low risk investment. But I just wonder, Kyle, you brought up the challenge credit. Then you have to be able to have an educated consumer that knows all the option and trim packages that apply. And then the big, unknown is who's handling that trade. Who's valuing it? Where does a car go? I mean, in Europe, Stellantis has its own used car model where they're like Echo Park, is Sonic, but Stellantis. So think about this. What happens if Ford decides, well, all of the vehicles that come into trade, we're going to take in, we're going to control, we'll mark up and sell the dealers, or we'll put out. I mean, that's a very different model than what we understand is possible today.
Yeah. Well, and look at all of the trouble that every dealer that I talk to that's dealing with Car Bravo right now with GM, it is a rough user experience, and they are trying to own both sides of it from an inventory perspective. And they just weren't prepared for it. And all of the education that came through dealers that, the hours of calls that I've talked to these dealers about, that neither side is handling that well. And that just means a bad consumer experience in the end, which to Paul and my argument is that the consumer experience is the problem that we're all trying to fix, and collaboration is necessary. So we're going to do the same thing. We're actually going to invite on this call right now. We're going to invite Jim to both ASOTU Con and MRC, because we'll be at both. Obviously, we'll all be at both. We'll be at MRC. And I think that this is not a one and done conversation. It's impossible. So probably they can be a podcast with me, you, and Paul, and we'll do ASOTU Con and we'll do MRC, and we'll keep going, because conversation is key. I do have that question of how many conversations are they having with the dealers that are boots on ground right now?
Yeah, and let's contrast something. Let's contrast the Ford communication flow to dealers and how dealers are feeling with Toyota. Toyota has been working collaboratively with their dealers on SmartPath. Okay. And here's what I love. And I just think of my good friend Glenn Rizzo at SET. He said, Brian, we want dealers to experiment with digital retailing. So they gave them 5 or 6 approved vendors. And here's what they told all the dealers. You get the experience. You work on the customer handoff. You create that consistent online and in-store experience. In the meantime, we're going to be developing SmartPath. And we're going to show you where we are. And then here's what Toyota said. We believe at some point we'll get it right, because they weren't like other OEMs who pushed an incomplete product onto the dealer network. And they said, when we get it right, I believe that you're going to want to.
It'll be so good, right?
So I saw an update. It's probably now 3 or 4 months ago. And some of the new features they added were so cool. Here's what I said. If I was a Toyota dealer, I would definitely be looking at this platform. And here's what they said, but Brian, it's still not ready. And we're not doing anything to impact our dealers negatively. So when you talk to dealers, what they think about SmartPath, someone say, it's great. I think I'll eventually be on it, but there's no animosity like like, you know, when Stellantis announced overnight, everyone had to use eShop. It was a shock. Like, why would you bomb your franchise dealers who were using competent tools like Roadster or Gubagoo or CarNow or Cox, whatever? And why would you tell them overnight, cancel them in 30 days? Here's a different product that basically was a payment calculator. Now it's gotten better, but it's been a year of trouble. So I think we also have to ask Jim and other OEM leaders, why can't you be more collaborative like Toyota? Why does it have to be closed doors and then the bomb gets released?
It's the key. It's the center point of what typically happens in any dysfunctional relationship, right? Past experiences, past things that have happened, lack of trust in the present, right, leads both parties to do things that aren't in the mutual best interest. So I think that this is a great time to just reset the meter. Dealers are ready to listen. If, Farley and Ford and all the great people that are working hard there because I believe they really want to win, if everyone can just take a step back for a second and say, okay, let's take a lead from some people who are doing it right. SET, great example with SmartPath. And let's just have a dialogue and just do everything we can in our minds to just believe that the other person has our best interest in mind.
Yes.
Just for a second, just long enough to have a conversation, a first one. Brian, I'm going to give you the parting word. What should people do? What is your advice to dealers? Aside from, I want everybody to click on the link in the show notes and go read. It links right to his LinkedIn post. Go check out the article. Like it, share it, comment on it, because the Ford team is probably monitoring this at this point. So if you make a comment, it's probably going to be heard and read.
That's right.
So Brian, what's your final word?
Last word for the Ford dealers watching this recording. Forward my open letter to your regional rep and encourage them to push that up the chain to just say, Jim, have the interview, come out to the conference. You mentioned the ASOTU Con and the Modern Retailing Conference. I want Jim to share his vision and answer questions. This is not a roast. This is not a bait and switch. No. And so for the Ford dealers, do that. And then the second thing is for the other dealers watching, please ask your brands the similar questions that are in that letter. You could take out Ford, start the dialogue now. Because what you're going to find is some are prepared, some are preparing, and some are really still looking for the dealer network to solve the problems that need to change for greater operational efficiency.
Well, Brian, as always, thanks for giving us some time on a Monday morning to make some trouble. This is the end. All of us have a lot of trouble planned for later this year. We're going to talk about it more, both that Modern Retail Conference and ASOTU Con. Lots of stuff coming, but right now, thank you for joining us to get to this meaningful work that we're doing here.
Thanks, guys, for inviting me, and let's have a great week.
Let's do it. All right, Kyle, I think that's all the time we have.
That's all we got. We knew we needed extra time today.
So whatever else you're doing today, lead with some empathy, ask honest questions, and be ready to flex a little bit and give someone an honest answer.